Hello, my name is Kemboi, and this is According to Kemboi. Welcome to the channel. And today we're talking about what the government should do to improve your life, to improve its citizens' life. We know that the government has a sole responsibility to ensure that its citizens lives in a good life, right? We know that that's what a responsibility of the government and to provide basic stuff. So today we're discussing exactly what is it that the government should do, our governments, what is it that we need to demand from them to do in order to for us to like have that quality life, as its citizen, right? And this applies to any government, regardless of the country you come from, right? So one of them is to ensure quality healthcare. Yeah, healthcare is very important, and you find that the government needs to always make sure that the medicine, are always in the country. We know that it's the sole responsibility of the government to sort of import medicine if the medicine are not produced locally, right? For example, in Africa, I think let me just say all African countries, import medicine from abroad. Unless your government doesn't do so, you can tell us in the comments. But the government essentially has that responsibility to ensure that its citizens are well taken care of health-wise, right? And the way it does this is to ensure that there is something called universal health coverage. You find that I think in Kenya, this is something like insurance schemes, right? For the whole to make sure that those who can afford those who can afford um, to pay can pay a bit more, and those who can't can pay less, and everyone can benefit from that healthcare system, right? So the government has that sole responsibility. In Kenya, there was NHIF before, and with President Ruto in power, I think it was reformed to SHA, right? Social Health Authority, right? Social Health Insurance or SHIF. So there's social health insurance fund. So you find that those who are a bit rich or those who work, they contribute slightly higher than those who does not have employment at all. But somehow, when they go to hospital, they're supposed to have equal healthcare. You know, they need to be well taken care of equally, right? That's what we call universal health coverage. And then another thing is providing affordable and quality education. Yeah, the government has to make sure that everyone can access education. You see, that's one of the ways to just make sure that it improves its citizens' lives, right? And I think this brings a discussion which was in Kenya of late. At some point, the minister in charge of treasury at some point went to parliament and spoke of the fact that Kenya can no longer afford free basic education. And this brought a lot of debate in the country. Yeah, then later on, the president had to come out and say that we are going to keep, funding this free education. So that's just one of the roles of the government to make sure that even those who don't have a lot of money can equally access education, just like the rich, right? Yeah. And then the third one is create sustainable jobs, right? They need to make sure that the economy is thriving and the environment, conditions are good enough to favor more businesses, because businesses are the ones that brings employment in a country. So a government has to make sure that businesses are always there so that a lot of people can be employed in the businesses, right? Because that's the only way jobs can be guaranteed, providing that conducive environment for businesses, right? And then another one is government needs to guarantee affordable housing and basic utilities. Yeah, I think the Kenyan government has this program going on. Because there's the affordable housing project that's run by Kenya Kwanza government. Yeah, the current ruling government. Right now we are in 2025. So the Kenyan government has that program, running about on affordable housing. So you find that these affordable houses are set through the country, and they're set especially in urban areas, they are set within or near slums. So the government has this ambitious plan of eradicating slums. Remember, we have got Kibera slum, which is currently one of the biggest slums in Africa. Yeah, and the government has that ambition of eradicating that Kibera slum. I think within by 2030 or 2035. Yeah, and so I agree. This is just one of the basic things that government should do to sort of improve our people's lives, because you find that those who are living in slums are also people. They deserve to live in dignity like anyone else, right? And it's just the role of the government to make sure that is the case, right? Provide electricity, provide water, yeah, provide roads, things like that, yeah. Then that brings us to talking of roads. That brings us to our fifth point, which is build and maintain infrastructure. Yeah, talk of electricity, talk of bridges, talk of rails, talk of ports, talk of airports, talk of waste disposal systems. You see, the government has that priority, has that responsibility to make sure that its citizens access those key services. You see, and infrastructure is one of them, because in fact, businesses are not going to thrive anywhere without proper infrastructure, and so the government needs to make sure that citizens can access this. Otherwise, there will be no business and there will be no jobs, yeah, created, right? And there will be no economy in the first place. So it's just one of the those roles, yeah. And then point six is to ensure safety, justice, and the rule of law. This is very important. So I think this is propagated by one of the is ensured actually by one of the arms of the government, right? I remember in social studies we were taught about the three arms of government. That's the legislature, judiciary, and an executive, right? The executive is the head, heading the whole government. But then now, the when it comes to law and justice, that's the role of the judiciary. And a country without a rule of law, if you find that there's no country there, there's no stability. Yeah, you find that in such cases, terror gangs, and terrorists can take charge. Good example is Somalia. Somalia is been I think it's been taken control by Al Shabaab, right? Some parts of it. That's as a result of collapsing when the government of Somalia collapsed in 1991. Yeah. So when Somalian government collapsed, you find that terror groups started taking control. Taking territory and seizing territory and enforcing the rule of law. Because now, if there is no government, then there is gaps. And so someone will want to take over. Another good example is 80. So 80 has been in control of gangs, right? Currently, as we speak, right? So those are just like some of the basic, responsibilities that each and every government should do. Yeah, ensure safety and justice for the people. Because in fact, business cannot thrive anywhere. Anywhere there is chaos, anywhere there is um, injustice, anywhere there is no rule of law, business cannot thrive, because then all the business are going to be looted and nothing is going to. There is no accountability, for people's actions. And then another one is the reduction in the cost of living. Yeah, I think this is important because not we're not equal, unless, especially I don't know which society everyone can be equal, because you find that in our current society, capitalistic society, the rich are always getting richer and the poor are always getting poorer, right? Somehow, that's what it seems. So you find that reducing the cost of living should be one of the roles of the government, yeah, ensuring there is no inflation, because now then those who have very little money cannot benefit from or cannot get total value out of their money, right? Then their money is going to be worthless, yeah. So it's just one of the important costs, and I think this is one thing that politicians normally exploit nowadays. You find that during the campaign trail, politicians are always promising to reduce the cost of living, because they know this is one thing that touches a lot of citizens, and they need to always emphasize on this. Otherwise, they're not going to be voted in. Yeah, that's what happens in the campaign grounds, right? And then the fifth one is the eighth one is invest in agriculture, rural development. Yeah, and I think the cost of living is also somehow related to this. You find that agriculture is very important. Yeah, without agriculture, there will be no food security, and without food security, that means that the prices of goods are going to skyrocket. Yeah, and if they skyrocket, that means that they are going to be less affordable, and if they're less affordable, that means that there'll be insuff um, there'll be food insufficient, and a lot of people are not going to eat. Right? There'll be somehow sort of hunger crisis. Yeah. I think I remember in Kenya at some point before this current government, Kenya Kwanza government took over, the prices of unga, which is a staple food by the way in Kenya, that's maize flour for those who don't understand, went high, extremely high. Yeah, it was like three x the initial amount. So in fact, the government had to sort of subsidize the prices, the prices of food. Yeah, for Kenyans to sort of afford. Yeah. And then at some point they found out that the subsidies are not really afford sustainable. Yeah, so they had to get rid of it, and there was and the prices skyrocketed extremely high as a result of uh, them doing away with the subsidy. And so the government had to focus on production, because now with production they had to subsidize production instead of consumption. So with production, then there'll be a lot of supply of food, and that way the prices can reduce. And then now, another point is preserve the environment. I think this is very important. You see, with the current challenges in climatic change and the global warming effects, I think it's a role of every country to sort of always preserve. Yeah, I think in Kenya there was this debate in some communities. There were some these countries which pollute the environment extremely. They pollute the environment a lot compared to African countries, because they're the one who own the industries, yeah, the Western countries in short, and those who are producing oil in Asian countries. Yeah, talk of Saudi Arabia and stuff like that, or UAE. Yeah, they're the one who pollute the most. So we find that there is that carbon credit. So they've come to Africa to sort of lease land to build, forests, to just sort of to sort of compensate, the fact that they are overpolluting. Yeah. So they have this idea where if they grow a lot of trees, then they can say that, well, if you overpollute there, then these plants that we've grown can consume the carbon, yeah, excess carbon. And I think it was sparking debates, among the some of the communities in Kenya, right? And I think it's just one of the responsibility of each and every government to ensure that the environment is good, at least for the future generations, right? Then another one is the final one is be transparent and accountability. And this brings us to corruption, because in most governments, you find that corruption is what is always there. People go there, they loot, especially in African countries where there are no strict measures. I mean, sometimes in some there are measures, but they're just not well enforced. You find that leaders who are corrupt, they get away with these things. Yeah. So the government has that responsibility to its citizens to be transparent and accountable to just improve their lives. Because now if everyone goes there looting, I think in Kenya there's this debate during Uhuru's government, the former president. There was a lot of corruption going on, right? A lot of scandals of public funds being stolen, and there was this a debate of odious debt. Government borrowing from external donors, and somehow they are not those that debt is not linked to projects within the country, even though it's required that in the Kenyan law that each and every loan has to be linked to a specific project, right? So you find that some leaders were accused, yeah, that allegedly they sort of took all the money they borrowed for themselves and invested in in accounts abroad, and then left, the burden of loans to the country. They borrow in the name of the country, and then they consume all the loans. And that's I think that's one of the reasons why the Kenya's debt is crossing $10 trillion, 10 trillion shillings, sorry. Yeah, now, which is so huge. That means that in every 100 shillings collected by the Kenyan government, 70 shillings goes to debt. Can you believe that? 70 shillings goes to debt. And this is just a challenge. What do you think? Leave your comments in the comment section. And of course, if you like the video, leave a like and support the channel by subscribing. I really appreciate your support, and thank you. See you in the next one. Bye.